Welcome back to the We Valiant Feud podcast. I am one of your hosts, Crossfire.
Raptor!
Slapshot.
And welcome to the last episode of Season 3.
This is the end
For you, my friend.
Yeah, this is the end of the rails for this. Today we are going to be talking about an interesting topic, Epicureanism. We'll get into that here.
Definition.
We'll get into that in a
Oh,
little
yeah,
bit.
I guess we've got some other things to cover, like our plugins.
You want to do them?
No, that's your thing, dude. You do it every time.
Okay, so if you're listening to us on YouTube right now, you know where to find it. If not, youtube.wevaliantfew.com. You can follow us on Instagram at WeValiantFew. We have a Facebook now, facebook.com/WeValiantFew. You can also find us on all major podcast platforms. And you can find all this information on our website, WeValiantFew.com.
Hey,
There's your plugs.
and you know what would be really cool? If you could share this to just one person. I'm sure you have one friend. And if you don't have one friend, you have some serious problems.
Yeah, people might be that.
Maybe if we're talking about Epicureanism.
Yeah. Yeah, well, yeah.
You might be a little too deep, buddy. But here we are.
Yeah, skip the boilerplate, da-da-da-da-da. People can't see it, screen's blurred out. Already did this. We'll skip this. And we'll get right into current events.
Current events.
We'll speed run the beginning of the last episode. Okay, my first one I have is about the massive anti-communist riots that are going on in Cuba.
Yes.
Have you seen any of that?
I have not. Enlightened me.
Violent.
Yes.
People, as the name implies, are trying to stand up against communism because communism sucks.
But they don't have guns.
They don't have guns. But yeah, the government is like, is that where? Correct me if I'm wrong, but I've seen like reports of the government just gunning people down and stuff like that in the street. Just
Yeah,
because,
I mean, it's the
shit.
same thing that happens, and the same thing that happens in China,
Same
although China probably keeps their tenement squares more under wrap now than most other countries, but Cuba has always been, or not always, but has for long been under this communist regime from Castro to who's currently running it now. Is
Yeah,
it Castro's like son or something?
I don't exactly know the relation there or what the guy's name is. I just know that he is a communist. But yeah, they were shutting down like the internet and everything. Like I don't know if they've turned the internet back on to the country, but they shut it off. I know
Holy
that.
shit.
Ron DeSantis was talking about bringing ships out and using them to create like a cellular network so that people could still get information.
At the same time, there's I saw United States senators that are saying Cubans don't come to the United States.
Yeah.
Like, so the whole idea of these countries or these people that like end up coming to the country illegally is under the idea of like
A better life.
yeah, under the idea of a better life, but like the United States will allow people in if they're escaping from like bad situations.
They'll encourage them to come in if they know that they're going to vote a certain way. And other places that are obviously running from the thing that they're trying to push, they won't encourage them to come. That's
too.
the motive.
That's another thing. But like America has had a like standing thing saying like if you're running from genocide or like
Asylum.
That's what I was looking for.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There's different doctrines that establish asylum, and there's also different rules for asylum that a lot of people don't actually follow.
but there are Democrat senators currently telling Cubans not to try to come to the United States because obviously if they're fleeing a communist country, they're not going to want to come to a country that is in the midst or half the political system are essentially communist.
They don't want them to. They don't want them to come because they know they're going to vote against it.
Yeah.
Look at any people that, especially like during Trump's presidency, the people who were Cubans, ex-Cubans that are like, oh, I escaped communism. So glad that you're not embracing it. Da 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 da. Because that's true. They're horrified by it. And,
I mean, yeah, you look at any Eastern Bloc immigrant or anything like that, it's all the same story.
yeah, it really is. So that's going on, and it's still going on.
That's a really good way to put it because I don't think a lot of people in our country would think of it like that as when you said they don't want the Cubans coming in because they know they're going to vote against most of hard leaning left.
Yeah, because they see what communism does to their country. Toward their country apart. People die. People get gunned down by the government in the streets, you know?
But whenever the government is telling you, hey, or the reason that the government is telling people, hey, we don't want you coming to our country is because in a communist society, the people that are winning in that society are the government officials, are the people part of the party.
Yeah, I mean that's how it is, because you get into party lock, and they only win a certain way because I mean most communist countries they tamper with their election system, so or they don't have them at all.
Yeah, or it's just one party system.
Or they scare people into following that one party, or they kill off their political dissidents, that they don't agree with it. I mean that's stereotypical history book how a communist country works. And the people of Cuba see that, and they don't want any involvement in that.
I mean, they've been under this communist rule. I mean, they've been embargoed from the United States since the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Yep.
Even prior to that.
Yeah, but it's like now it's starting to get hot.
Well, now it is because the people are sick of it, and they're standing up. Like you vote yourself into communism, and you have to shoot your way out.
Yep, that's true. We'll follow this though as it goes on here.
Cuban Missile Crisis Part 2.
Yeah, basically, right.
Cubans don't have missiles. Not now.
Moving on to my second point here. Did you see that YouTube was systematically removing Trump's CPAC speech against big tech censorship? They're afraid.
Doesn't surprise me because I personally don't really follow Trump outside of like the election and him being president, because at the end of the day, I don't think Trump is the savior of the Republican Party.
I don't either, but it's still that like an official. They didn't censor anything else at the event, just him. And most of and really specifically his speech on big tech censorship.
That's also really interesting because if you've seen on Netflix, there's I think it's called The Social something. It's basically a documentary on big tech and how they essentially control people. But this documentary is on Netflix.
Yeah, I mean, and Netflix has been pretty left-leaning in the past.
Which is interesting that that's allowed to stay, but
everything else isn't.
Or like Trump in particular isn't, or like it's hard to really gauge what the like main goal of.
It's a silencing of opinions.
Yes, that is the goal. But like, why is it some opinions are okay that meet, or is it specific people? I don't know.
That's why you have that's the problem with having an oligarchical type group that's deciding that.
Right.
It's whatever they feel like at any given day, which is terrifying.
Yeah, and giving the mirage of having free, like, look, we posted this thing that openly talks shit about us, but really we just allowed it to.
Yeah, because it's all a facade.
Yeah.
That's any big tech platform.
I just think it's incredible how our country originally started to where it is now, because there's just so much that we don't know that our government is probably and most definitely hiding from us.
We're never gonna know either.
No, we're not gonna know.
It's a scary thought to think about, because there's so much that we are being withheld from.
But at the same time, we can't sit here and what is the word I'm looking for?
Take it.
QAnon, crazy thought.
Conspiracy.
We can't sit here and make conspiracy theories and stuff like that, because then you look like crazy. You have to come up.
You blare right past where you should be and end up on the deep end.
Yeah. You have to come up with tangible solutions and tangible things that are actually happening to base your opinion on.
Yeah, I mean, that's just it. That's a good life lesson.
Yeah.
Moving on to my next thing. This is kind of relieving. Do you guys see that Texas was trying to pass a voting rights bill?
Yes.
Did you see anything about that?
I did not.
So they were trying to pass bills that would return the normal integrity of the elections and ease on all the emergency declarations they made during COVID to make voting easier. They were trying to return it somewhat to normal. It was still going to be more lax than it was normally, but they were trying to restore some of it. Of course, it's all about voter suppression now. It's the grind the blues voter suppression. So the Democrats left Texas to break the quorum.
They went to D.C.
They went to D.C. because that's out of the jurisdiction of the Texas Rangers, right? Abbott, he's like, I'm not having any of this. He's put out a thing to arrest any of the Democrats that left.
Whoa.
So they're partying in D.C. currently.
That's spicy.
I give it like a 5% chance of them actually getting
Nothing's
arrested.
gonna happen.
They are beyond it.
No way.
Anybody who thinks that there are not two justice systems is being facetious. There straight up is. If you get pulled over and get a speeding ticket, depending on how fast you're going, your life could be screwed up forever. You could lose your license. You could lose your job. You could you have to go. You could possibly go to jail depending on it. You know, what I mean, like for something menial. But if you do something like what these guys do, it just gets washed underneath the rug.
Like, your job is to vote on these things, and you're leaving simply because you know you don't have the votes to get your voters, whatever. So how are you going to stay in office? Well, you could do something preposterous, which is simply just leave.
A publicity stunt.
Yeah, a publicity. That's essentially what this is. It's a publicity stunt. And unfortunately, like, okay, so you're neglecting your job, your duty as a senator, as a elected representative, regardless of your party, to do the thing that you're supposed to do. And the governor says, hey, if you don't do this, then you're just going to get arrested for not following through on your oath. And
It doesn't matter to them.
Which it doesn't matter. Because,
Yeah.
Like, what are they going to sit in D.C. forever? Or, like, what's going to happen?
No, they might. Who knows? It's sickening though. It just that's their thing. And you know that the people that vote for them are just cheering them on. They're loving every piece.
Oh, yeah. Like, I saw most of this, like, live coverage, I guess you would say, from Dan Crenshaw, because he's been very, obviously he's a representative in Texas, and he's been very open to saying, like, these people are cowards, these people are sick, this is disgusting.
No, they're absolutely cowards.
Yeah.
I mean, that's putting it nicely. I think that's insulting to cowards. Regardless, move on to your point.
So in North Carolina, I saw some headlines for volunteers, in quotes, which are actually part of a, like, deep leftist organization, knocking on door, like, going door to door to people's houses and giving them fact pamphlets on the COVID vaccine. Now, on one hand, if you want to do that, then you can do that. The thing that's a little crazy is the fact that they, along with their fact pamphlets, they're also armed with people who medical personnel
Yeah.
who can administer the vaccine at your house. So these people are going to come to your house, talk your ear off if you allow them to speak to you, and then they're going to try, after their spiel is done. It's like them trying to sell you a vacuum, except instead of a vacuum, they want to inject you with something.
See, it's somebody was telling me today. They're like, "Oh, well, I don't understand. That people are always going out of the way. All this conspiracy stuff, thinking about, about the, it's just medical science. It's like I don't, it's like." And I told him, I was like, "Well, people, it's so politicized. People are so worried about how long it took them, or how short of a time it took them to do it." He's like, "Well, I buy a car that's brand new first year, and I don't think much about it." I'm like, "Dude, you don't even get it." Like,
yeah, this is something. A car is much different than injecting something.
Well, he's like,
into your body.
he's like, well, people worry about their lives. He's like, you don't think you'd be worried about your life with a car driving down the road? I'm like,
there are, like, specific safety, like, things that are set up that cars go through, even if it's their first year. I said that
too. They're like, well, these people that develop these viruses or these vaccines aren't starting from scratch. I'm like, but they kind of did. But I just quit arguing. I just said, well, I guess everybody has their own free will.
Was this your boss?
It might have been. I hate getting into political stuff.
Oh man.
I
do try to avoid political.
I just say most of the time it's like it's too political for me. Even though we run a political talk show, nobody at work even knows about this.
Because my boss knows I have a podcast, but I don't go into detail.
I don't even say that because what's going to happen is they'll start a big questionnaire thing and then it'll go off the rails from there.
Right.
So I just keep quiet about it. At least to that group. Just to avoid the
you have to know your audience. That it's obviously not our audience.
Exactly. And I know there's nothing I'm going to be able to do to say anything. But going back to your thing about the people going around doing the vaccine stuff, I wanted to add, while that's happening in France, they are requiring people to have a vaccine passport. The actual, the epitome of, hey, they're not going to do this. They're not going to do this. They straight up do this. To go to cafes, which is a huge thing in France. Like the stereotype. That's not a stereotype. That's actually, well, it is a real stereotype. People actually do that. To go to cafes, Restaurants and movie theaters, I think, are the three big ones. So I don't know about the people who literally can't get the vaccine because of other prior medical things. Yeah, they're just screwed, I guess.
I mean, France has basically, since post World War II, they've been a socialist democracy.
Yeah,
or,
pretty
like,
much.
Democratic socialists, essentially.
Yeah,
But that's most of Europe, even at that, too.
They should have fought harder after World War II.
I don't, which I also don't understand,
terrible.
because during World War II, Churchill was openly like hated socialism and was afraid of the entirety of World War II. They were afraid that the Russians were going to create a pact with Germany, and they did at one point, to basically not fight or have to fight Russians and Germans. Which now you have communists and fascists fighting on the same side for the world domination.
Both extremes.
But how does Europe post World War II become this socialist?
Because they're
Like-
so afraid of anything that's even remotely fascist. Because fascism is the
It's the
antithesis
opposite,
to
yeah.
communism. So they're anytime they're even close to anything fascist, which just politically,
socialism.
ideologically speaking, fascist is always extreme right, and then socialist
Socialism.
is extreme left.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just the way it lines up.
Yeah.
And like anything else, extremism is bad.
On
On
either
everything.
scale, yeah.
Not even politically, just on everything. But what I'm getting at is anything now right leaning to them. It's like, oh well, that's I don't want to. They think about it's like, oh man, I don't want to be involved with this because this is like this is starting to go towards what the Nazis thought. I know people that are Germans are real picky about it.
Oh yeah.
So they always err on the side of caution, and politically that is left. That's how that happened, at least in Germany. And everything else, I think, just fell suit. Because I think, like, a lot of those countries that are, like, Eastern European never got out of it. Like the people that live there are still, like
Under some sort of socialist.
2/3 of the people that live there were underneath the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
I don't think that just changed overnight.
No.
So I think that's for the other half of Europe. And I think everything else has just been festering as part of that. To answer, I mean, that's just an educated guess.
Well, it's a good thing that we don't live in France.
yeah, definitely.
currently.
Hey, it's also a good thing we don't live in San Jose, because you ready for my news? Have you heard about what's going on in San Jose at the moment?
No, if it's something related to California, I usually just kind of tune it out. If I'm being honest.
Well, hopefully in like a couple years there will be that massive fault that causes California to break off from the U.S., right?
It would give a lot of people showers for the first time.
Well, here's what's going on in San Jose. So the mayor and his council, I guess, are currently in the works of passing a bill for firearms insurance that every gun owner has to pay annually. And what that dollar amount is any shooting related expense. So that's first responders, medical expenses related to the shooting, anything in regards to a shooting. Firearm owners have to pay an annual expense towards it, and they just kind of all pay into it to pay for it at the end of the year.
They should actually learn how to spend money based on all the other egregious taxes that they already have.
Yeah.
Right. So to tack on to that, there is a pro Second Amendment group out there. I don't quote me on the name. I don't remember what it is.
The 11 rounders
No, it's not them. I would have remembered that. If that's actually a thing, then I.
should be.
I'm fairly certain.
Oh,
like
I get
the
the joke. I get the joke now.
I'm pretty sure
Wow.
that's not a thing, but it should be.
I can't believe that just went right
the
over my
11th
head.
round.
Okay,
Whoa.
regardless, but they're like pressing the mayor right now, saying like, "Hey, we're going to like sue this for being unconstitutional if you guys pass this any further."
What's going to happen to them? It goes back to our earlier point. Nothing ever happens. They can just sit there and keep doing whatever they want because they were voted into it, and they have ultimate power.
It's really depressing.
Yeah,
It is. It's extremely depressing because
there's
why
no checks
should
and balances.
why should firearm owners that are expressing their constitutional right be punished for some Joe Schmo who acquired a firearm illegally that wanted to go kill someone?
It's about demoralization.
Yeah, it's trying to make it not worth it for you to own firearms.
Yeah,
like if we
exactly.
can't,
That's what it
if we run through the court systems and we can't get them, whatever, we'll just make it so egregious for you to even own it, for you to not even want it.
It's like, oh, you
It's a
can
damn shame.
You can have this AR, but in order to shoot it, you have to break open the receiver and load the bullets and
It's the same thing with SBRs and suppressors. Like you can have them, You can have a short-barreled rifle, you can have a suppressor, but you have to go through a 6-month wait period. You have to pay an extra $200, which at the time of its release was a crap ton of money.
Yeah, they never changed it.
They never changed it. Like, it's been $200 since the
inflation.
40s. Yeah.
Yeah, one time it came in handy, right?
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
that's 6 months to maybe be allowed to have one.
Yeah.
If you filed your paperwork wrong, you won't know until then.
No. No, it's like,
It's
you wait 6
rejected.
months and they're like, oh, we rejected it because you didn't spell your name right. Or because you didn't fill out this.
You missed this box.
Yeah, this box.
Yeah.
Or maybe you got, like, for whatever reasons, whoever's going through your paperwork is angry and you got, like, a parking ticket or something. And it shows up on your record. Oh, well, you're not trustworthy.
Yeah, all that could happen. Or even better, it's like, yeah, you can shoot your pistol as much as you want, no problem. But for every shot, you have to go through this actual circus. All these obstacles.
You have to go through the
To
circus.
jump through a
huge
ring of
cra-
fire.
Yeah. No, but
Or
it's
you're not allowed to shoot on your own land. Or, like, a ton of that.
yeah, but
Like,
all
it could
that,
be anything.
all that. Yeah, and you're only allowed to shoot one shot per location. Well, you're
Per
still allowed
year.
to shoot your gun though.
You can shoot it. You're allowed to have them.
Besides the point.
You can only have 10 rounds of ammo on
This-
you.
This train.
On
has,
you,
This
period.
train.
Ever.
This train has derailed. We're gonna tie it back into the
No,
original.
we're
article.
definitely on the.
We're on the same track.
We're
We're,
on
we're
the track.
explaining how difficult it's all about making it difficult, because it's like, oh yeah, legally
That's
you're
the
allowed
idea.
to do it.
That is the whole idea behind this tax and this insurance policy is to make it.
has not passed
it-
yet,
yeah.
but I don't.
It will.
I don't
It's,
know.
it's California.
You're right. I mean, that's the only reason why
They're
I'm doubting.
2/3 Democrat.
Democrat.
I wouldn't call them
Democratic.
democratic.
Yeah, I know.
It's
it slipped,
not the
excuse
same
me.
as Democrat.
You're right.
Although Democrats like to think that that's what.
Yeah,
that means.
it slipped. But they're there's the Democratic Party. Fuck again. Democrat Party has a 2/3 majority in that state. It's gonna pass. They'll probably get a super
the thing that will
majority.
stop it is Supreme Court cases, like they did. They ruled recently on California's ban on assault weapons, and a Supreme Court ruled that to be unconstitutional. And then they're fighting back with, I don't even know, but they're basically
Whatever
fighting
magic
it.
dust they feel like
whatever
pulling
magic
out.
California dust they seem to have.
Unicorn dust.
Do you want your maybe your last point?
I also saw another thing about the continued pulling out of Afghanistan. I have like mixed feelings about this. I think on one hand, I mean, we've had conversations like involving Afghanistan, involving China, stuff like that. Like, I don't think we should be involved in foreign conflicts, but at the same time, China is now moving into Afghanistan in our absence to build roads and basically establish a proxy communist country in Afghanistan
These countries
on the heels of us leaving.
and these countries are extraordinarily unstable.
Yeah, they're not. It's
Well, yeah. Why do you think they're moving in? They're just like, think of Afghanistan as like that little 6-year-old child down the street, right? Like, you could tell him anything and he'll do anything you tell him because he doesn't know any better.
well because
That's
they have no one
Afghanistan.
else. They have no other role model. So the main role model leaves, which I don't think we should be spending money over there, or like at a minimum we should just have like a staffed base there.
The UN should, in reality, that should be like what the and I
Has
know
the UN done anything?
I know that I know like the whole
There's a
they've
whole lot
muddied
of
they've muddied what they
UN
should be doing.
stuff.
But the whole point of the UN was founded on should be what this is taken up underneath.
Yeah, I wholly agree. The UN should be there to help stabilize the country. But the UN and the other thing is we pay basically the entire bill of the UN,
NATO
and
yeah,
everyone in NATO and UN hates us.
we didn't join the League of Nations. They see how well that went. Just do it all over again. But the point is, it's like, you have these massively underdeveloped countries, second and third world countries. I'm excluding little tiny pockets here and there. That they're gonna be manipulated. Or what's gonna happen is we're gonna leave, and all of a sudden the magical nukes are gonna start dropping over there. And you know what's the first country that Afghanistan's or Iraq or whatever is gonna drop a nuke on?
Us.
Israel.
Oh yeah, you're right.
And Israel is a nuclear capable country too, so it's gonna be a fireworks show in the Middle East.
At the same time, like even without that, say China goes in and starts building roads, and they're like, "Hey, we want to build roads, but we also are going to set up a proxy government. We also want to be able to put missiles here.
Yeah, it's gonna happen. I mean, it's going
It's
to
absolutely
happen.
going to happen. And that just happens because we pull out. And again, that's why I have kind of issues, because on one hand, we've been there for a long time. Soldiers have fought and died there to make this place better for the people that live there. And
Yeah.
It's to next to no avail.
It's not really our business. Like,
We're not nation builders.
no, we're not.
we shouldn't.
And
be.
we shouldn't be. And we have
shouldn't
enough
have to
problem.
be.
We have
We
enough
shouldn't-
problems at home to deal with currently
That aren't addressed.
that
yeah.
aren't addressed.
It's just sad that what you said. It's just we've been in there for so long, and for it to go to waste.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think anybody can disagree with that.
I think
really.
a lot of other veterans that have spent time there would truly understand.
That's the worst part about it, is all the people that
Lost their
that
lives
have
there.
lost their lives, or have had some massive, some horrible physical injury, or have wasted years of their lives over there for what effectively boils down
It's
to
similar to
nothing.
Vietnam,
Yeah, it's exactly.
except we were there much longer.
We've been in Afghanistan longer.
Yeah, Afghanistan much longer than Vietnam.
Yeah.
But
How long were we in Iraq for?
20 years. We are still in Iraq technically.
How
Well,
long have
I
we
think
been
We're
in
pulling out
Afghanistan?
of Afghanistan.
But what, 19 years, I think they said.
Yeah, it's something right underneath Iraq.
Yeah.
Because we invaded Iraq prior to Afghanistan.
Right.
Afghanistan, we followed the Al Qaeda into Afghanistan.
That's right.
Yeah, and don't think Al Qaeda's not there, still there.
Afghanistan technically isn't the Middle East, though. Did you know that? Afghanistan is actually Asia.
You're right.
Yes, you're right. Actually,
Or, like, it's not considered part of the Middle East.
nice. Yeah, you're actually right, because that line is the separating, like
Yes.
right there. So yeah, because as soon as we leave, that
Someone else is going to hop on the opportunity to
Al Qaeda's going to come out of the.
Oh yeah, they are. They already are. Al Qaeda is already taking bases, and eventually Bagram, which is the biggest base in Afghanistan, will fall, and that'll be that.
We'll just see how it plays out. I guarantee you we'll end up going back within the next couple years.
I don't think even if we leave, then we shouldn't go back.
The
Period.
entire Middle East is.
Unfortunately, because we can't go back without conflict with China.
You're
yeah.
right. That's a good point.
Yeah, or
That's
Russia.
a really good point.
Yeah, like you said, or Russia, because Russia sets up proxy states in the area all the time, and that's what they've done.
That's what communist countries do. They go to these impoverished countries, and then they world build, and they're like, hey, look at all this great stuff.
owe us
that-
stuff.
We're
But hey, we're not nation builders, so maybe we should just focus
But-
on ourselves then.
Yeah, and we
At
have
the- at
enough
that point,
political
if we can't go
discourse.
back.
We have enough political discourse at home to be worrying about an external conflict.
Yeah.
Yeah, really. Moving on from that though, I think we can get into the main topic at hand of Epicureanism.
Epicureanism.
So we decided to cover this topic as an end to season 3, and it kind of goes along with our whole idea or our whole theme this season of like philosophical content. And the best way I'd say to start there is what is Epicureanism? And the easiest way to explain it is kind of the other like inverted Stoicism. Is a good way to look at it. Whereas Stoicism focuses on duty, Epicureanism focuses on pleasure. Now that could come in a multitude of different ways. It could be just through happiness, through doing something you enjoy, being around people that you enjoy, or other means. And that is to someone who follows Epicureanism. The pleasure is the ultimate good. That's the end goal. So you can
So is it seeking happiness through pleasure?
no, seeking pleasure through happiness.
Okay.
Pleasure
We're
is
getting deep with the thoughts here.
pleasure is the absolute goal.
Okay.
It is. It says. happiness is the main goal. You be happy, and that's often manifested through pleasure.
Through doing pleasurable activities.
Yeah.
Being around people that bring you pleasure.
Yeah, and comfort, and any like a higher standard of living.
Yes.
Which is what appealed to a lot of people back then, because you figure this. I don't know when, I think it was Epicureanism, where it comes from. I think it was like the 300 BC's range, something like that. Of course I didn't write it down, but back then, a lot of people didn't really have a high standard of living just because the way the world was, it was underdeveloped because it was old. So, an offer to have this higher standard of living, it's like, oh wow, that's cool. It's like dangling the bait out there, So a lot of people followed it because of that. I pulled a couple things from Britannica that help add to this, like the way that the Epicureanists thought about things. They looked at everything as small elements in a large universe, so that way you would be happy amongst yourself, and everything else would exist around you. Kind of like, not isolationists, because they weren't isolated, but they looked at the individual over the collective, which again we'll get to some more reflections between that and Stoicism. It was also high emphasis on a removal from pain, which
is an interesting.
It falls in line with a pleasure and happiness,
right?
And there was a lot of mental, since pleasure is a mental thing in most cases. They would always care about relieving themselves from physical pain. It's really philosophical and obscure. So how they did that, I didn't look
essentially. I mean, what it sounds like to me is you're avoiding unfavorable situations.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it was that, or I would imagine that like some cases they probably took drugs and stuff to do this back then. I mean, I didn't. This is speculation, but if they're like, oh well, mentally we got to be mentally good, but we're physically ill or something like that, then that's pretty that's pretty clear. So kind of a interesting group of people. And like I said about deriving pleasure from being around people you enjoy, they very, very, very highly valued friendship because they enjoyed it, But like how normal people are like, oh, it's cool, friends here, we'll go out, do this and that and the other. They like centered their lives around it. Like they always hung out together, and it was kind of sounds culty, but
I mean,
but it's not bad though.
It's
interesting.
It's interesting, and I'm interested in equating it to Stoicism.
Yeah, which is what we'll get into right now. The main differences are like the method. I think we could boil that down into method.
Yeah. Because the goal's the same.
The goal is the same. Goal is both
to achieve happiness.
Yeah, to achieve happiness, but through different means. And I'm gonna kind of go out of order what I have written here, to kind of build from that, because I wrote these in a specific order, or in specific order. Stoicism, like I said, is all about duty, whereas your happiness comes from doing the right thing.
And also not focusing on things that you cannot control.
That goes back to the whole one element in the universe versus a lot thing.
Yeah.
So, like, whereas, like...
You are the single element in your universe.
Right.
Whereas Epicureanism sees it differently.
Yeah. So that's about duty, and then the Epicureanists always were focused on pleasure.
Right.
Through whatever means. Stoicism also focuses, like you're saying, heavily on doing the right thing, because that is where you get your enjoyment from.
Yeah.
Whereas the Epicureans focus on fulfillment and learning, because that's how they got their pleasure most of the time. Stoicism is more idealistic, whereas that like you can't always do the right thing, and not everybody's always going to do the right thing, so you always have the hope of doing the right thing, which makes it idealistic. But most people, if they get close enough to it, they're happy. But idealistic overall, Epicureanism is heavily materialistic, because they get pleasure through things or physical objects around them, or people, so they're heavily materialistic.
Yeah.
That's just like the center of their ideology. And the last big reflective point that I wanted to bring up, there's more, but Stoicism is heavily focused on fate, that whatever happens, I should care about the things that I can
control.
be in control of. Whereas the Epicureanists were always about everything is accidental. It happens. It just happens. You know, that's.
And you should, regardless of what happens, you should just continue to seek the pleasure.
Yes.
Like, if you get cancer, doesn't matter. Go drink a beer, like, whatever.
It's not like in it. So Epicureanism is not the antithesis to Stoicism. It's more so like the protagonist and the what's a derogist or dertagonist?
Antagonist?
No, not antagonist, not opposite. They're like two things that are trying to work together, but they're not the same because they both want the same goal in the end. But it's just a matter of how to get
very
there.
Different way of going.
Yeah, very.
I feel like some of the ideas conflict.
They do.
A pretty heavy amount.
So, which is what I wanted to get into talking about, you guys can add in yours if you'd like, but I wanted to talk about how we follow along these lines. I mean, I know I'm very heavily Stoic based. That things happen, and you can only worry about the things that you have control over because if you can worry yourself sick and it's not going to matter. But on the same end, I do focus on things from Epicureanism as well. You know, that pleasure is important, but for me, I find pleasure through duty. If that makes sense. Like, I know that if I do the right thing, that's what I enjoy, which is more heavily aligned with Stoicism. Well, it's like 90-10.
Even in the same breath, like, I would say, I think we both find pleasure in learning.
Absolutely.
And knowing things, knowing more things.
And being around people we enjoy. Like, those are the elements that I pull from Epicureanism that I enjoy. And learning is extremely important to me. I
mean, that's why I say, that's why
I always add to that,
That's why I always say I'm a jack of all trades, master of none, because I'll sit there, like, I'll learn a thing, like a new thing that's happening or just whatever, and if it interests me enough, then I'll deep dive into it and learn as much as I possibly can about that subject in a very short amount of time. Like, if there's something that's interesting, I'm not just going to let it, like, someone says something, I'm not just going to let it sit there. If it's interesting, I'm going to go look for it. I'm going to search more information. I mean, I've done that with stuff as simple as, like, Star Wars lore or stuff like that. Or into stuff like this with philosophy.
Right. I mean, that's like the whole entirety of what we've been doing this whole time is part of that. It's a learning experience for all of us.
You guys know how I got into magic tricks. I had to learn one talent for my rookie initiation for college hockey. So I'm just like, God, I don't really have a talent I can display. So I quickly thought of, I could do a card trick, right? So did the card trick during rookie initiation, got all their reactions. They absolutely went crazy over it. I'm just like, wow, imagine how many more tricks I could learn that could blow more people's minds like this. Like, just seeing their reactions fueled that fire. And I went from learning one trick to knowing about 30. And that's how I got into card tricks.
It's all part of it. I mean, it's
the same thing.
Yeah. It's the same thing, different subject
Simple
matter.
example.
Yeah. But it's interesting, especially like wrapping up the season. It's interesting to see all these philosophical points come together. Because there's a lot you can talk about philosophy. There's about as many different philosophical ideas as there are people.
And I mean, we've talked about Stoicism in the past and how a lot of the stuff that we talk about in, like, being a leader and stuff like that all kind of falls under the Stoic idea, but at the same time, in our normal lives, there's, just off of what you've explained, Epicureanism to me is, I can see that a lot of my niches and things that I do fall under this, I guess, source of pleasure, because I very, very much highly value my friendships.
Like, if you were 100% Stoic, you would throw your friendships to the side if duty was more, if something came up that conflicted with duty. Right. That's what a Stoic would do. Like, and there's time. It's just like anything else. There's a time and a place for that. And I think that's the most important takeaway from this and from this entire season is that you're never just one ideology.
One thing. Yeah.
You are the culmination of
ideas.
A culmination of ideas, especially now in this generation where we have the entirety of the human knowledge at our fingertips here. You get exposure to a lot of different ideas versus these people that lived back in these ancient times. It was whatever was in their local environment. I mean, a lot of people back then couldn't even read or anything, so they couldn't even research it. without going to see it or having some random traveling merchant or
Telling
missionary.
you, hey, this some dude in a box told me about this thing.
Yeah. No, I mean that's
That's how it
literally how it
traveled.
works. Yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
And what's really cool to me is being able to, I guess, pick apart or actually put words to, or put, I guess, definitions to the things that we do normally without even thinking. Because that allows you to be hyper aware of what you're doing.
And reflect on what you're doing.
Yes. And with the ability to reflect on what you're doing, that allows you to make decisions to either continue doing that thing if you like it, or you might identify something that you don't like that you're doing that you might not have seen before until you actually defined it.
And see, that's where that's where again some of my stoicism comes in. It's like the being able to reflect on what you are doing and how that corresponds to your overall goals in life. I call that duty.
Yes.
You know, that's unique.
Because like if you are only hyper focused on pleasure, then you might find a ton of pleasure in killing people.
Yeah, I mean
that's not that's not okay, Chief. Like on an extreme example.
No, that's part of it.
You're right.
Because I mean, back then, if you were an explicit follower of this, and you know, you like say there's a whole group of them, and that's what you say, like, oh, I find pleasure in this, based on our ideology, they would have to agree with it, because oh well, hey, you know, that's
what brings you pleasure. That is your goal.
Yeah. Whether it's morally right or not, because they didn't care about duty like the Stoics did. Because the Stoics would be like, oh, well, hey, that's morally wrong. Killing people is bad.
Yes.
And they would say something about it because duty mattered more.
Right.
For a long time, I've been trying to, I guess, put words to my like life philosophy, and I'll see stuff that I like that I do and stuff that I don't like to do, and I'll try to find alternatives. And at the same time, I often find myself saying, well, do I want to change this? Is this something that I am interested in changing, or am I happy with this thing that might
You're reflecting on it, yeah.
that might externally make other people upset? And a lot of the times I just find that a lot of people don't do this.
Yeah. I would agree with that.
It takes a person with not even much higher thinking, but like someone to care enough to even
to even sit there for
and even consider
5
it.
seconds or any amount of time to reflect on, hey, am I on the right path?
Yeah,
that's hard to do.
Yeah, I think it's very much lacking on our generation.
Oh, absolutely.
I wish people would get more into philosophy, because philosophy is a very interesting discussion, and that you learn a lot about yourself just by doing
and
some
others.
Research, and other people.
Philosophy is not so much psychology. Well, yeah, even psychology. There's definitely a psychological element to this. You understand why people do the things they do,
which
or at least
also
helps
you empathize with people.
It does.
Do either of you know anyone that majored in philosophy or logic in school?
I do, and
a handful.
Yeah, philosophy especially, yeah, and I don't know if they would get the stuff that we get. Some would, because it's more so like the clinical philosophy side where it's like, oh well, you know, your feelings are
so
hurt.
and so said this.
Yeah,
Aristotle said this.
Oh, well, more so like, oh, well, what makes you feel bad? You know,
yeah.
Like there's a time and place for that. And some people are a lot more advanced than that because they actually cared to research more, not slight.
Not just learn. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like anything else. It's like, you know, they wanted more out of it, so they put more into it. But like, I feel that we could understand people better than some of those people. It's just based on how it works out. Especially learning about some of this and like doing the research to figure out this stuff. You know, I found other stuff too. That. Well, you know, I'm not going to just go name a bunch of stuff off, but it's interesting to think. It's interesting to see all these different mindsets that existed throughout the years, because you're like, oh well, that's what someone is. Or like you look into it more, it's like, oh well, you know, so and so I know that's why they act like this, because they're the closet stoic or whatever, you know.
Yeah, or they
don't
even realize it.
Yeah,
and that's the other thing, they don't even have the semblance to to take a second and think about it.
Right.
If they do, they don't have the interest to talk about it.
Or they don't research it at all to even figure it out, because to them it's normal.
Because everything that
too.
they
don't even think about it.
Yeah, everything that they do is like just them.
Yeah.
That is like, and the only thing that will essentially change them is a significant emotional event, where like something traumatic or whatever happens, and it changes the behavioral aspect of their life.
It forces them into that reflection.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
Yeah, I mean, and I mean, I've had that happen before, and I know you have as well. I imagine you would have had that happen.
Yeah.
That you can sit and think about it. That moment that you reflected on, and how much clearer things became, or just maybe not even so much clearer. It's just that, oh wow, that makes sense.
I just think being able to break down your own interactions after they happened into like
Do an AAR in your life.
Yeah, doing AARs on your life, after action review, for those who don't know. But basically being able to pick apart things that you've done. And I mean, some people might say this is like anxiety speaking, but on the other hand, like you can use that as a tool to better yourself. Like I hate using, because I have anxiety, but I don't like using anxiety as a crutch or an excuse for me acting a certain way.
Yeah, you face it head on.
Yeah, and I tried to, and there's like, for whatever reason, talking on the phone calls, I get anxiety from phone calls. Don't know why. It's one thing that it's probably the hardest thing that I've ever had to get over in terms of anxiety.
So you're telling me you'll jump out of a goddamn plane, but talking on the phone?
I hate talking
hard.
on the phone.
I make phone
Are
calls
you
all
serious?
day long.
It's different. It's different if it's someone I know, but if it's like, for instance, in a business sense, having to call like a vendor or something, my body fights me tooth and nail.
Oh, you did. You should.
Yeah, and do you know how you get over that fear? You just keep doing it over.
I
and
do
over.
it, and I don't get me wrong. I'd never say like, oh, I can't do this.
Yeah,
I
no.
always do it, and that's also why I like my philosophy of anxiety, because I used to have much worse anxiety, much worse than that, but I've kind of continually weaned myself into these situations that cause me anxiety, and me being able to reflect on that and see like, okay, I know this one thing causes me anxiety. Like I was able to pinpoint, like, I don't just have general anxiety, like I know what causes me anxiety.
Was it like causal anxiety? I think is what that's called. Where, I mean, as the name implies, something causes it.
Yeah, I mean, and there's other stuff other than phone calls that cause me anxiety that are probably a little bit, like in public places, if there's a lot of people, or people I don't know specifically. Now, if I've met you like 1 or 2 times, then I might start to open up more. But even if someone new is added to the group, my personality changes a slight amount, I would say.
Right.
I become a bit more quiet, whereas whenever I'm around my friends, like, and just my friends, I probably talk the most.
And anecdotally, that's true.
Yeah.
And I think everybody has that to a certain point where they, especially with new people, they become reserved a little bit. And, you know, I mean, like a lot of people probably do that out of a respect aspect.
Yeah. Because you don't want to go hard on people. Like, hit them with stoicism on the first day.
I just met you 5 minutes ago, but here's my philosophy lesson.
Here's my entire
who would do
life
that?
lesson.
I could think of a couple people. Who
Blackbeard.
Blackbeard. That's exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah. Too bad he's on that super secret tactical mission that we're not allowed to talk about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He'll be back one day.
He'll be back one day.
F's in the chat.
F's in the chat.
See you soon, Blackbeard. We miss you
Yeah.
and your very outgoing self.
He's gonna be awesome afterwards. He's gonna be all. He's the ODing on SARMs right now.
I love SARMs. Not really. I don't do SARMs.
Not really. Blackbeard will be back
Um,
after he gets back from his spec ops mission.
I'm still trying to wrap my head around you being afraid of phone calls.
I never knew that. I'm not like afraid of phone calls. I'm thinking about the SpongeBob and Patrick meme where he's like, in the mermaid, or with the enemy from, like, Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy.
Oh,
what's
the
Manta Ray or whatever.
Man Ray.
yeah.
Man Ray. And he's like, what's the meme? Like, what's he afraid of? Or what does he say he's afraid of?
I don't know.
I can't remember what he's actually afraid of for
Anyone
the
in
show.
chat wants to throw that one up for us and help us out with a goddamn SpongeBob reference.
We'll have to follow that post show.
Yeah.
The only one I can think of is the one with Man Ray finding Patrick's wallet and be like,
Is this your wallet?
so,
Yeah, that's all. That's all I
No.
can think.
excuse me, sir, you dropped your wallet.
That's not my
That's
wallet.
not my wallet. Well,
It's just
in
your
this
license.
wallet has this ID, and this ID is your ID. So
Yes.
therefore, it is your wallet.
Makes
But
sense to me.
So then take it. Well, it's not my wallet.
Yeah. that describes basically 90% of our generation
Yeah.
in one item. But that's all I have for today's episode. Not a deep dive, a shallow dive.
A very shallow dive. into
Shallow
it.
dive into another form of philosophy.
I encourage our audience to look into the Epicureanism, look into Stoicism, and the as soon as you look them up, you're going to
Yeah,
find
you're
some of
gonna
the other
find-
ones that I had come across, because it's all of it binds together. If you do, and you feel that that's something interesting that you want to talk about, you can talk about it on our Discord. It's discord.wevaliantfew.com. I don't know if we pinned that earlier. I
No,
don't
we
think
did
so.
not.
I don't think you did.
No, well, there it is. You can follow us on our Instagram at WeValiantFew and Facebook at WeValiant or Facebook.com/WeValiantFew. Especially, we're going to be, with the seasonal transitions and whatnot. Follow that for updates, for new release schedule. We are going to be changing the release schedule for this. Details to come on that. Once that's ironed out. But again, if you're listening to us on YouTube, you know where to find us. And if you're listening to us now, please like, share this video. Hit the subscribe button, hit the bell icon to know when we go live. Or you could, I don't know if you guys noticed, I've been putting stuff out when we're going live on our social medias, at least on Facebook, because I didn't have a fancy graphic made for Instagram. But regardless,
Those memes.
yeah, regardless, if you're not listening to us on YouTube, it's youtube.wevaliantfew.com, or you can listen to us on all major podcast platforms. And all that is on wevaliantfew.com. So I think that's pretty much it.
Thanks for sticking around for season 3.
Before we totally tune out, I got one message for us. Due to heavy work schedule, personal reasons, I will be stepping down to co-host, not so much a host.
Okay.
I will be here and there. I'll still definitely be around, but I won't be as involved as I once was. So for the audience members, that is for you.
So there's your news.
I'm not disappearing, but I'll be around.
Okay, other than that, I think we are good to go. We will see you next season.
Yeet.
Yeet!